Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on creating use case diagrams with visual paradigm. Now you'll see that what I actually have up here is a context diagram, and that's the last diagram that we covered in my systems analysis course. And this is the version that I created with a visual paradigm. And uh, because we cover both context diagrams and use case diagrams in our systems analysis class, I believe that the context diagram is a very good starting point for building the use case diagram. Now, to a certain extent, these diagrams kind of compete with each other. They give very similar information in two different ways. And that's because context diagrams are a part of an older methodology for systems analysis and design called structured analysis and design. And they're part of data flow diagramming. And this was a new approach in the 1970s, the late 1970s. And it's been a popular approach ever since. Whereas use case diagrams are part of object-oriented analysis and design, which really came into prominence in, say, the late 1990s and the early 21st century. So I think they both have their place. Okay, we only use a little bit of data flow diagramming. And the first thing that we learn it for is to really find a good way to express the scope of the system. So if we just look at the diagram that we have here, the symbol in the middle that says attendance system, that's the system itself. The three rectangles are what we call external entities. They're the users and or other systems who interact with our system. And the arrows that go between them are data flows. And that shows how the data flows from the users to the system and then from the system back to the users. And so it really represents the interaction between the system and the users. And it's really expressed in terms of processes, in this case, because we're using the context diagram, we're using the top level process from data flow diagramming. So with just one process as symbol for the entire system. And then the other thing that we look at in data flow diagrams, in addition to process, is data. And so we show the data flowing in one direction or the other. So when you're looking at a context diagram, if you want to know which users are involved, well, then you look at which external entities are exchanging data with the system. And if you want to sort of understand the nature of the features that they're using, you have to look at the data flows and infer from that what functionality is being used in the system. Now, if we were into data flow diagramming to a larger extent, we would have created a whole set of data flow diagrams. And so if you had a whole set of data flow diagrams, and you wanted to know which part of the process was being interacted with in each of these data flow exchanges, you could go down to the lower level data flow diagrams and get more detail. That's not something that we're doing in my class, and it's maybe not worth the effort. At least I've decided that it's not worth the effort for us. So we're getting, again, what do we get out of a context, a diagram? Well, we get sort of an expression of what the scope of the overall system is. Uh, who who are the users that interact with the system? And what's the nature of their interaction with the system in a data flow oriented expression? Okay, so let's just go through our sample application here. This is an attendance system where students are able to, when they come to class, are able to log attendance to say that they attended that particular class meeting. So the interactions between the student and the system are down here on the lower right. So the student sends an attendance report. They're logging their attendance in a particular class meeting, and they get an attendance report confirmation back. They're sending in a summary report request, and they're getting back a summary report that says, here's your attendance information for this particular class. The instructor, on the other hand, has sort of three interaction cycles that go on with the attendance system. One is where the instructor wants to set up a class, so the instructor, she sends in a class setup request and gets back a class setup confirmation. The other thing that she could do would be to add, change, or delete registration. So she sends in an add, change, or delete of registration. Probably, if this were well named, it probably would be add, change, delete, registration, request. Okay. Or registration change request. That probably would have been a better name, more of a noun phrase. Whereas this is a little too verby. And then there's a confirmation that comes back. And likewise, the instructor can ask for a summary report and get a summary report back. And the one other thing that we have is we have a system administrator who sends in requests to authorize users on the system and gets back confirmations. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to say, hey, okay, if we have that kind of functionality, what does that look like in a use case diagram, and how's that going to be different? So let's close this diagram, okay, and let's open a new, let's create a new project, and we'll call this project let's call this one student attendance use cases. Okay, create a blank project. Okay, so there we go. And we want to create a use case diagram. Use case diagrams are part of the Unified Modeling Language, or UML. So up here on the toolbar, we find UML. Take the drop-down tool to the right. And right here, the first thing we have, use case modeling. We have a use case diagram. So let's click that. And here we are. Okay. So let's see. We have a diagram name. So right now it's being called use case diagram 1. Let's call this student attendance system. Okay, we'll take care of that. All right. And you can see that the titles up here in the top went to that. And I find this diagrammer, like all diagrammers, it's a little idiosyncratic, but it's a little bit challenging if you want a diagram that has multiple pages. The other tool that I do tutorials for in this class is Visio, and that seems to be a little bit more friendly to a multi-page diagram. It's kind of easier to see how the pages are going to work out. But let's look over here in the palette for drawing. We have the use case symbol, the ellipse or oval. We're going to use that. We have the actor symbol, which is a classic stick figure. We're going to use that. We have the association line that connects the actors to the use cases. We're going to use that. And then we have this rectangle that is shaded, and it's called system, but the tooltip says defines the scope or boundary of a system. So that's exactly what we want. We want a boundary box. Okay. So when we create use case diagrams, we could, if we wanted to, we could create one big use case diagram. Okay. In which case, so we'd have a single system boundary box. All of the actors who interact with any of the use cases would appear outside of the boundary box, typically either on the left or the right side. All of the use cases that make up the functions in the system would be inside of the boundary box. And then we would have to draw these association lines between the actors and the use cases that they interact with. Well, the problem with just having one big use case diagram is it doesn't take too big of a system before it gets very crowded. And it gets crowded in two ways. One is it gets hard to fit the use case ellipses into a boundary box that's going to fit onto a single page. And then two, as you're connecting the actors to the use cases with these association lines, you get a lot of crisscrossing of lines, which is not illegal in use case diagrams, but it's considered sort of bad art. Okay? So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is to have multiple pages of use case diagrams in which each page has its own boundary box. Okay, and each page has a subset of the use cases, and it shows the actors that are associated with those use cases. And we call this kind of a subsetting of a use case diagram into multiple use case diagrams. We call this packaging. So each of these subdiagrams is a package. Okay, so what kind of a scheme could we use to package our use cases? Well, at a minimum, people tend to want to distinguish between especially with the IBM tools and their training on this, they talk about business use cases and administrative use cases. So what's a business use case? Well, it's a plain old use case. It's a person, it's a user, it's an actor using the system to get some kind of a job done that has to do with that actor's real job. Well, how's that different from an administrative use case? Administrative use cases usually have to do with the care and feeding of the system as a system. Things like logging in, things like giving, uh, things like getting users authorized so they're able to log in. I mean, this isn't something that a user would have to do if it were not for just having to please the system. So, at a minimum, we tend to segregate the business use cases from the administrative use cases. And so those are two packages right there. Now, as soon as you get a system that's big enough, then you need to package it in a little more fine-grained way. So what we typically do is we divide up the business use cases, but typically by either actor or groups of actors. So in our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have three packages. I'm going to have 3 pages in the use case. One is going to be called student-facing use cases. So it's only going to show a single actor, the student actor, and the use cases that the student actor participates in. The second package or page is going to show instructor-facing use cases. So it's going to show the instructor actor and the use cases that the instructor actor participates in. And then the third page is going to have the administrative use cases. So let's try to do this. We're gonna create 3 pages here by taking this system. Remember, that's the boundary box, and pulling it out here. I'm going to leave room for my actors. Okay, and I'm going to take my system. Leave some room for actors. I take my system and I'm going to pull it. Well, I'm going to make it about like a page, just about like this. Okay? And so that's going to be my first package. Okay? And then I'm going to create another one. And how do I get one below this? Well, I just click on the system icon again. I pull it down underneath. And as you pull down on the window, you see it makes a little bit of white space for you, right? And one of the nice things about this diagrammer is it gets these sort of alignment tabs that come up. You get a line that says, okay, now we're aligned with the thing above or the thing beside. So I'm going to pull out on each side till I'm properly aligned. Okay. And now I need to pull down. So I'm going to pull down a similar size. Maybe something like that. Okay. Are these about equal? Now the first one's a little big. Maybe. So let's make the first one a little shorter. And let's move the second one up. About like that. So they're about the same size, I guess. First one's still a little big compared to the second one. So, alright. Let's try something like that. And now we're going to do a third one. Okay? So we're going to pull that down underneath, and when we do that, it's dropping underneath. Well, it doesn't seem to want to work there. Let's try again. So let's pull this system thingy out. Okay, now it's making some room for it. And let's leave it right there. So we're going to pull it to the left till we align, pull it to the right until we align. Okay, and then let's pull it down to a reasonable size. Okay. All right. So, and these are going to be our three packages. Okay. So we can go to the name for the package. We can double click on the word system and type over it, say student hyphen facing use cases. Okay. And apparently I have a typo there. Okay. That's working. And come down to the second package and call it instructor hyphen facing use cases. All right. And then go down to my bottom one, double click on that and call that administrative use cases. So deciding how to divide your exactly how many packages you're going to have and how you're going to divide things, it's a practical and almost arbitrary kinds of thing. But again, the ideas I've given you so far, I think, are going to be the most useful. Having a separate package for the administrative use cases keeps them from cluttering up other parts of the diagram. And then if you can't get all the business ones onto a single page, or you think, well, you just like to be able to concentrate on one actor or actor group at a time, then kind of break them up according to some kind of theme that makes it easy to review your diagrams with the stakeholders. Okay, so let's see how these are going to format out. Now, the other thing is we're going to want actors. Okay, and I mentioned the student-facing ones are going to have the student. So let's pull the student actor out here. Okay, and let's pull another actor symbol down for the instructor. Okay, let's try to get that about halfway over. And it turns out in the administrative use cases, I know, because I've already done this a few times, I'm going to have two actors. And I'll explain what they are in a minute. Okay. And is this one lined up too? All right. So I'm going to go up to my menu and click on File and say that I want to save the project. And I called it Student Attendance Use Cases, so I'm just going to save it with that name. And so I've got my changes. And how do I do printing? Well, there's a lot of ways to do printing, but one way that will show you the pagination is what I want you to use, which is go up to the toolbar, and all the way on the left we have a tool for a project. Take the drop down and choose print. And it's a little bit hard to see here. Let me move this in. What we get is we get another window, and I can see, okay, I've got on the first page I'm showing that first boundary box for the first package, and that could be a little bit longer, okay? And then the second page could be a little bit longer, and then the third page could be a little bit longer too. Okay, and then the other thing that I see is I've got room over here on the left for my actors. Now, I just want to point out is if you have a number of actors, you probably want to put actors on the left and actors on the right, in which case you would have to make that boundary box skinnier side to side to make some room over on the right side for another actor or actors. Okay. What happens though is that unless we put another actor symbol over on the right side, it just sort of expands this to fill the page. So I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But that's what you would have to do if you wanted to have. Well, I ought to show that happening. Okay, let's say we wanted to have an actor symbol on the right side too. Okay, and this is about where we want that. Okay, now let's just go back up and go on Project and choose Print. And you can see that that works out okay. All right. So if I did have a second line of actors over here, it would go into perspective enough to work out okay. So all right, that's fine. So I'm going to get rid of my actors on the right because I'm not going to need them. And then let's do some changing of the sizing here. We wanted the first page to be a little bit bigger. And we wanted the second page to be pretty big. So the second page be bigger. And then let's have the third page be pretty big itself. Okay, maybe something like that. And then let's pull the actors to about the right spot. That's an actor in about the right spot. Oh, I need two actors down on the last page. Yeah, I do. And on page 2, I've just got the one actor. And on the first page, I've just got the one actor. Okay, so let's assume this is about right. Again, let's go up to the toolbar, click on Project, click on Print. That's not too bad. Okay, looks like my first page is a little too long now. My second page might be about right. Okay. So this is where I say this is a little bit of a pain. It's much more intuitive on Visio, and maybe if I were a little bit better at this, I'd be okay here, but I'm not. Okay, so let's see. Try it again. Print. Okay, still a little bit long on the second page. Now, if we just, if the first page were a little shorter, I think we'd be okay. So let's make the first page just a little shorter and see if that works. That looks okay to me. All right, it's not perfect, but it's okay to me. And we can see here that we have up on the very first page, there's a title Student Attendance System, and then we have these three kind of packages that are boundary boxes, and they each have the name of the package on them. Okay, well, we're ready to get into more of the details. So if you remember, for the student-facing use cases, first of all, we need to give the actor a name other than actor. So we double-click on that. It's typically what you do to activate the type. And let's just say that the student actor is named student. Okay? And while we're here, let's just go down to the instructor actor and call them instructor. And we'll leave the other actor symbols as they are for now. Okay, now we've got two use cases for the student. One is log attendance, where they give their information in about having being in a class that they're currently attending, a class meeting that they're currently attending. And the other one is generate student attendance report. So let's pull two use case symbols out here. use case symbol number 1 and use case symbol number 2. All right. And again, there's pretty good alignment tools. It's a little bit hard to see, but there are these golden lines that are showing up. Okay, and let's double click on the first one to get it at the type and call it log attendance. Okay, and double click on the second one and call it generate student attendance report. Okay, and I'm seeing that at least on the lower one, we're going to have to resize this to be able to see all the type that we need. Okay, and now we can pull it back into the center. That's good. And maybe log attendance is a little crowded too, so let's grab that and pull that a little bit bigger. They don't all have to be the same size. It's okay to have the ones that have a very big title be bigger. Okay, so have we properly named these? Well, typically they have a noun-verb phrase. I'm sorry, verb-noun phrase. So they're action-oriented. Log attendance. Generate student attendance report. Yeah, those sound good. So let's move the student up here, kind of right in the middle. And now we have to draw the association line. So click on the association line to load it up. Click over here at the edge of the student to say I want a started student. Go to the use case you want to connect and click that. And it will connect it. Didn't do a great job of connecting it there, so let's pull it in here a little bit better. Okay, I don't really like the way it's connecting. All right, so I don't like where that is. There are little attachment points, and we've gone to the lower left, and now here we're in the middle on the left. That's good. And even for the actor, I don't really like where that is. So let's change that attachment point there. Okay, so that's pretty good. And let's draw another association line. Let's try to start there and end here. Well, that didn't work. So let's escape to stop that. Association, load that up again. Select student, select the use case. And again, I don't mind where it's attached to the use case, but I want to come over here and attach it to the same connector on the actor that the other one is. All right, so I think those look pretty darn good. So what does this mean? Well, what you really have to remember here is this doesn't have anything to do with data flow. The only thing that you can tell from the package that we see here of student-facing use cases is that the student actor role is involved in 2 use cases, log attendance and generate student attendance report. In which direction does the data flow? Well, you can't tell from that line. The line just says that they're involved. If you want to know the details, you have to go and find the written specification for the use case, look for the actor named student, and see how they are involved in the action of the use case. That's the only way to find out. Okay? And you'll notice that the connection line, the association lines, don't have any arrowheads on them either. It's just a plain line, and the line just says, this actor involved in this use case. If you want to know details, go find the spec. Okay, so let's go down to the instructor-facing use cases. And you might remember from the context diagram that we have kind of three interaction cycles. One to set up a new class, one to register students in the class, and then the other one to generate the instructor attendance report. So let's just pull the three of those out as use cases. So use case, pull that out. Pull out a second use case. Pull out a third use case. Okay, kind of align them here. Again, it's a little bit hard to see on this screen because of the colors, but they're like golden alignment lines that are popping up that allow me to align these together. So my first use case here is called setup new class. Setup new class. My second one is called add, change, or delete student registration. Add, change, delete student registration. Okay, and that one's going to have to be made bigger. And the last one's called generate instructor attendance report, and that one's going to have to be bigger too. Okay, so let's resize the ones that have more type in them. Okay, grab the corner and do that. And I'm going to make the little one a little bigger too. And then if we pull them into the middle, we'll see the alignment line pop up for centering, and we want to center these three. Okay, that's good. And let's put the instructor up about even with the middle of this. And let's connect the instructor to all three of the use cases. Now, when I move something like that accidentally, what I usually do is I do here on the Mac, I'm doing a Command Z. On Windows, I would do a Control Z, but it's an undo. Okay, so I can get back to where I was without having to rediscover the alignment. Okay, so let's go up and get an association line. Attach it to the instructor. Come over, attach it to the use case. And for some reason, this thing, as soon as you attach an association line in a multi-page diagram like this, it wants to jump up to the higher parts of the diagram. And why that is, well, it's just kind of an odd behavior. Okay, so let's create a second association line from the instructor to this second use case. And again, it jumped on us again. So now let's scroll down again, create a third association line from the instructor to the use case. And that one didn't work. Oh, it didn't hear the first one. So when I don't have it working the way I want, I just want to hit escape. So I hit escape and I stop that. So I'm going to go up, load up the association again, click on the instructor, click on the use case. And again, it jumped. And I really don't like that these are using three different attachment points. So I want to go and grab the end of the top one and pull it down where the middle one is. And grab the end of the bottom one and pull it in where the middle one is. And that looks pretty good. Okay. All right. So again, what's the meaning of the line? This actor, instructor, participates in these use cases. How? We don't know. You have to go to the specification to find out. Okay. That's why we just have a plain line. Okay, and let's look at the names of the use cases. Okay, set up new class. All right, that looks good to me. add, change, or delete student registration. That's good too, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And generate instructor attendance report. So when we're picking what the use cases are, we want to make sure that they're big enough so that they're significant for the actor. You know, what kind of things does the actor have to do in their job? We don't want small incidental things like enter account number or that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a very small part of a use case. But if an instructor can set up a new class on the system, that's a pretty good unit of work. Um, Likewise, generate the instructor attendance report. Um, you know, we ask for the report and we get the report. That's a pretty good unit of work too. The middle one um, takes a little bit of artfulness. Okay, first of all, what's the unit of work? Is it registering all the students in the class all at one time? Okay, in which case it would be, you might think it might be called register students. Okay, um, or so there are two issues. One is how many at a time? Are we going to do all at once or are we going to do one at a time? The problem with doing all at once is that that might work for registering them, but in my experience, then what do you do when you have like add drop and you want to add one extra person or you want to subtract a person, or let's say you got a name wrong, so you've got to change. So my thought is to think of it as a group of functions, add, change, and delete, and one unit of work is for a single student, right? So, um, uh, so I kind of like it just the way it is there. Okay, now there was a time when I would have made add, change, and delete three use cases. Okay, well, if every kind of thing that you're going to add, change, or delete is going to have three use cases, you're going to have three times the number of use cases than you would otherwise have. So I've been talked into combining those into just a single use case. Okay, now let's look at the last part, which are the administrative use cases. Okay. And again, the administrative use cases are use cases. These are things that the user has to do, interactions that they have to have with the system, but they don't really get user work done. They really get, mother may I system work done. The two that I typically always include, and I'm going to expect you to always include, are authorized user and login. Okay, so let's add those. Okay, so I'm going to add a use case here, and I'm going to add another use case here, and authorized user, this is where someone tells the system, I want a user to be able to use the system in a certain particular way. I want to authorize them. Okay, and then the other thing is, in order for that to work, we have to require that users log in. Okay, and I realize that login is not a noun a verb noun phrase, okay, log into system, but we typically just say log in, so I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, so let's center these. Okay. Now, who are the actors here? Well, this is where I'm really going to want you to get in touch with these actors representing roles. Okay. Okay. So when somebody is going to log in, are they going to play? Are they going to be playing the role of student or instructor? Well, I'm going to say that they're going to be playing a more general role than either of those. They're going to be playing the role of system user. Okay, so system users are a more general role than instructors or students. Okay, so let's double click on this lower one and call it a system user. Okay. And then the other role that people take, who's going to get the users authorized? Well, is system administrator. So system administrator. Okay, and maybe I think I might want to put a carriage return in the middle of that to force it. No, I can't force it onto multiple lines. It decides how many lines that's going to be. Okay, that's good. Now, here's how I used to do these. Okay? In terms of the connector lines, the associations, I used to put an association between system administrator and authorized user. And we jumped again. Apologize for that. Happens every time. And then one between system user and login. Association line, system user, login. Okay, jumped all the way to the top that time. And it says, okay, that's good. Now, once I really got explaining this to the class last year, what we realized was if the system administrator is the only person who interacts with authorized user, how does the system user ever come to know that they're authorized? Well, it's possible that it goes on outside the system. Okay, and if it goes on outside the system, for instance, whoever the system admin is, if they go and they have to do something individually that's not a function of the system, like, walk around to the desk, leave a note, get into their email, send an email themselves, well, then that's not a system function. So we might say, well, we don't have support for the system notifying a new user that they're authorized. But what I would like to show here is that let's say that when the system admin gets a new user authorized, the system automatically sends an email to the system user saying, hey, you're authorized to use the system. Here's your username and here's a temporary password. So now authorized user interacts with both system administrator and system user. So let's connect it to system user as well. Okay, and go down there. So now we've got system user. Okay, so again, that looks pretty good, but let's pull the connection point down so that they share a connection point. And now I kind of like that. So here's where I just want to put a little more time into thinking about the roles here, okay? So let's say that we finally implement my student attendance system, and I, Kevin, I'm one person, right? I'm Kevin. I've got one job title, lecturer, okay? But I play a number of roles with respect to the system, okay? First, I'm probably going to play system admin myself, okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be able to authorize all the users who need to use the system, okay? And then, of course, each of the users is going to be notified. Every time I use the system to do something, I'm going to I'm going to do login, in which case I'm going to be playing the role of system user. Okay, so typically what I do with authorized user is the system admin says, I want to authorize a particular individual to play a particular role. Okay, so I might say, I want to authorize Kevin to play the role of instructor. Okay, so that means when Kevin comes in as system user and logs in, the system knows, oh, Kevin is allowed to run all the use cases for instructor. So then Kevin comes up here, okay, is logged in. The system knows that Kevin is able to run all the use cases that an instructor can. So then when you look at what is exposed in the user interface for Kevin, he sees that he can do three different things: set up a new class, add, change, delete student registration, or generate instructor attendance report. So me in a normal work week, I would probably play the role of instructor. Everybody plays the role of system user, and I probably would play the role of system admin. Okay? Whereas a typical student, they of course are going to have to log in after they're authorized, so they're going to play the role of system user, but then they're also going to play the role of student. And when they're authorized, their authorization is going to be able to play the role of student. So when they're logged in, what are they going to see in the user interface? Well, they're going to see that they can do log attendance, or they can do generate student attendance report. Will they see these instructor use cases? No, they won't. So typically we don't show them and then you try to click on them and no, you're not allowed to do that. Well, no, that's kind of old school design. New way of thinking is you only show them the use cases that they can do. Okay, so they would see from the student-facing use cases, they would see both of them. They wouldn't see any of the instructor-facing use cases. They just would be invisible to them. And then of the administrative use cases, they would see login, but because they're not authorized to be a system admin, they wouldn't see authorized user. Now, I've talked a little bit about the specifications that we're going to write for the use cases. So the information we get from the diagrams is pretty high level. It does really explain the scope of the system, though. It explains the roles that people play in interacting with the system, and it shows the functionality that's exposed in terms of the use cases, right? But if you want to know more, if you want to know how the flow of action happens inside of a use case, you have to go look it up in the specification, which is going to be what we learn in the next unit of the systems analysis class. One of the things that we put in the specifications for use case is what the preconditions are. One of the preconditions can be that a particular use case has been run successfully. So for instance, in the preconditions for the instructor use cases, it's going to say that the user has successfully run the login use case and qualified as an instructor. Okay. For the student use cases, it's going to say that the user has run the login use case and successfully qualified as a student. Okay, so we can we express this as a precondition to run each of these use cases. And that's how we get these kind of interaction e- 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 effects between use cases without having to show those confusing use case to use case relationships. We use preconditions. And we're going to learn about that in the next unit when we learn how to write a use case specification. Okay, so that's the document the way we have it now. Let's save that. So I'm going to go up to the menu and say save file, save project again. And then I'm going to go again up to the toolbar, go over to project, take the drop down, pick print. And it looks like this is going to show up in three pages. Okay. And if I come up here on the left side in the toolbar, the leftmost icon is some kind of a printerish icon called print. So if I click that, I'll get a dialog box. It says I want to print. And of course, because we're going to submit PDFs, I want to go down here and say I want a PDF, right? Save as PDF. And I want to go to where I want to save this. Okay, I put mine in my courseware development examples, and for the use case diagram, visual paradigm. Okay, and what you will be doing at this point, at least the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to be doing skills practice use case diagram. So the name of your file would be your last name, trainer, your first name, Kevin, skills practice, use case diagrams, and we say save. And I think it's gonna open the PDF. Is it? It's not. We have to go and open the PDF ourselves, which is another application. But while I have you on the line here, I'm going to go find that file and open it up and satisfy myself that we've got the PDF. And we do. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Now, those of you who did the visual paradigm version of the diagrammer for the context diagram will know that we had to go and download a trial copy of the paid version of visual paradigm. And when we printed out the context diagram, we got a whole bunch of watermarking all over it. Here, because we're using a use case diagram, one of the UML diagrams, I've been using Community Edition, and there's just a very small watermark at the very bottom of the diagram. So let me pull this up, and you'll see there's a watermark down at the bottom of the last page. So that's it's a lot less intrusive than what we saw last week on the context diagram. And this is what you typically get out of Community Edition. So this is it. This is how you would get your PDF. Everything's all set. You're all ready to do your own for your skills practice assignment. So I wish you luck with that. And I'm going to say bye until next time. So bye-bye.